All right, Greg, are you ready?
I'm always ready, brother.
All right, we're going to do a little music and then I'll bring you in.
Hey, before you start, you never have told me what Maddie and Daniel do.
Hey, that's a good.
That's a
I
good
know
start.
that Maddie always walks the line of getting in trouble at work.
I do. Oh.
So, Greg, let me just welcome you to the show. We're going to learn all that stuff in a few. But this is episode number 16. We have my friend Greg Crumpton this week. And so before we do, Maddie, let's talk about discipline really quick. Last week we talked about discipline. What was your takeaway from that?
I think that the takeaway is going to be if you're not disciplined, people around you will subconsciously not follow you.
Nice. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So that's a good takeaway. Discipline's hard, right? That was one of the things that Daniel had said. And so my takeaway was we all need to be disciplined. And, you know, we can all improve everything that we do through discipline. So
Agreed.
good enough. Greg Crumpton, how are you doing,
Hey.
man?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here with you guys today.
Yeah, excellent. So, Greg Crumpton is a friend of mine, and he's joining us for this episode, number 16. And Greg is a man of much doing. He is and Greg, please correct me if I'm wrong, Vice President of...
I'm the Vice President of Safety and an Industry Liaison, I was told.
Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't get that wrong. So, of Service Logic. And so, Service Logic is the mothership of the company that I work for. And so, it is an honor to have you, Greg, coming on our podcast. I'm really excited about it.
Well, I'm excited to be here. I love what you guys are doing. I've been following along. I didn't realize there had been 16. I don't know how many have dropped, but the ones that I've enjoyed have really been good. I love the conversations. I love the intentionality that you set with the agenda. And I think intentionality was one of those intentional things. You guys are doing some good work, and I'm proud to be with you today.
Excellent. That is
Thank you.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you. We do enjoy it. You know, Greg, you said you're hard. It's hard to believe there's this is number 16, and so we recorded. We started in the fall, and we recorded. And I guess it's been a while since you and I talked at any lengths, and so you may be getting a little caught up today, which is good. We're just going to have conversation, and but yes,
Well, one of us owes the other one a call to set up a meeting, I think, to get caught up.
This is going to be a fun
discipline.
episode.
Yeah. Talking about discipline.
yeah. No, this is gonna be great. I do actually owe you a call. It's been a little bit overwhelming out my way. You know, between work and lots of changes have taken place. I've bought another house and I'm selling my lake house. All that is transpiring right now.
I mean, we worked so hard to get it done.
Right. Amen.
That was last fall.
Yeah, and now it's up for sale. So,
Nice. I should get a cut on that, by the way.
yeah,
Having
absolutely.
lived through it.
Yeah. But here's the thing: we started this vision. I had this vision last fall of, hey, I want to teach. I want to be a teacher. I've always liked to teach, and I want to teach the stuff that I've learned. And you know, I've had a leadership journey for a while, but I need to get better. And part of what helps me get better is helping other people. I believe that that's something for everyone to hear. Part of what makes you better is when you help others and serve others. And so it also at the same time makes other people better because you're helping and serving them. And so I believe in that. And so I got with Daniel Maddie really in the fall, and we said, hey, let's do this. And so we bought some equipment, and we said, and I just said, I'll write the curriculum. We'll bring in some guests, and we're going to teach. And they said, we'll be students. And I said, well, let's do it. So there you go.
I was kind of voluntold to do this. I didn't really know what I was signing up for, but I'm all right with it now. So,
well, that usually happens, Maddie. You don't really understand why or how, and then you get in the midst of it, and you're like, "Oh, this is cool. I'm glad I'm doing it."
Right.
I've had many life experiences like that.
That's good.
After being married for 39 years.
I was about to say, I think being married constitutes that. So,
yes.
Greg, before we get started, and we've started, but before we talk about all these questions I have, which I have many, tell us about who you are. Who's Greg Crumpton? And I went back and listened to the podcast I did with you on your show. It's Straight Outta Crumpton a while back. And for all of our listeners, so I'm going to introduce him as Greg Crumpton, but he also has a podcast, and it's called Straight Outta Crumpton. And Greg, you feel free to enlighten our audience on your show, because I'd love for them to go and listen to some of your stuff. Greg also has some leadership stuff on there. If you filter through it, there's a lot of different stuff on Greg's show. But talk about yourself, who you are, and and your family, please.
Well, again, it's good to be with you guys today. I think anytime we get to be with other people and expand our brains a little bit, we always come out either changed or at least motivated to do something, whether it's good or bad. It's always motivational to hear what other people have been through, how they think, both good and bad. So, I'm an air conditioning guy. That's all I've ever done. That's all I've ever known. I'm a second generation guy. My father was in the industry for many, many years. It was a natural evolution for me to become involved in the industry. I didn't know how deeply I would become involved in the industry until later, after going through some similar experiences of maybe a little bit where you are or have been, Jeremy, of kind of figuring out that step, that rhythm, that cadence. As you grow, you learn, and as you learn, you want to grow, and you just kind of keep moving up. And as I said a while ago, my wife and I, Connie, we've been married for 39 years last month. And, we laugh because we kind of feel like we raised each other. We both got married. We were both young. And we've learned a lot with each other along the ways, good, bad, and different. We've still learned. We had built a business that we started from scratch and way back in 1999. We ran that business and had a ball with it. We sold that business 10 years ago. And, I think I started down this path of wanting to help other people really when I was an apprentice way back in the 1980s. And I can tell a story about a friend of mine who is a mutual friend of Jeremy's and mine. And what I said one day at a job site, and he said, "You must be crazy." And I'm like, "I don't know, man. That's just how I think." So I've often had this little brain activity of helping others. I just didn't know I was doing it or why. And then as I started going through life, I got out of the apprenticeship program and I became an instructor at the apprenticeship school. And it was really good for me, but I wasn't mature enough to do it very well. It was something that had I gone back 10 years, after I graduated and did it, maybe it would be better. I learned a lot. And you said a while ago, when you become a teacher, you become better. And anytime you're going to teach, especially theory, something that is, you can't change the facts of air conditioning, vapor compression, because it's theory and it's proven with gases, pressures, temperatures. So you really have to buckle down and learn your craft. And that helped me from a technical aspect, but I wasn't mature enough yet from a human aspect to really help these kids because I was a kid. But as I went on, I went through these various leadership positions at a company where you and I both used to work, and learned a lot there of how to serve people better, what worked, what didn't work. You know, kind of like most 28-year-old boys, you go through this thing where you think you know everything. And then about the time you're 38, you realize you don't know anything. So having that whole transformation happen, and then running the business, my business, our business, Connie and mine, Airtight Mechanical, we learned a lot of not only taking care of our employees because they were important, but we didn't look at it as having employees. We had families, and we had 40 families to take care of, not 40 employees. And when we looked at our company and our vision and our decision making responsibilities, we tried to look at it from how do we affect the Girl Scout and the Boy Scout and the swimming, camp, and mom's work and dad's school, because families aren't one dimensional. It's not just taking care of mom or dad, whoever happens to draw the check. So I think through all of that, I've learned that I really do like to teach. I can teach a lot about air conditioning, but that's kind of boring because it is not. I mean, it's static. It's not a dynamic conversation. You pump gas or you pump water or whatever. But the human side of it, I really enjoy. And I've got a young kid or 12 that I'm working with now at various stages of their lives of what they're doing. And I really enjoy that. So I've kind of gone into this mentally like a consulting role, even though I'm working. I still think of myself as a consultant, and how can I help the people that I serve and work with from my years of experience, not just because I happen to know a particular thing. In my family, they know that I'm a psycho on the air conditioning side, as well as a bunch of other things. But they embraced it. So, you know, that's kind of me. I'm a air conditioning dude who loves to learn and to teach and try to help the next generation get over whatever hump they happen to be focused on that day. Because when you're young, humps come often.
Nice. So I'll have you know, Greg is also a mentor of mine, has been for some time now. He works with me. He spends some time with me in lunches and stuff, and we just chit chat, and he helps me a lot. So that servant's heart that he has is real, and he does help lots of people. And I've heard him interact with other people, and how can I help? I mean, he wants to tie people together. He's a relationship guy. So Greg,
Dot
look,
connector.
Dot connector.
connector.
I like it. That's good. Wanting to help other people. That's what I heard him say, right? And so, Maddie, did you have any comments to his intro?
No, I think it's really cool how you said the thing about you don't look at it, or y'all didn't look at it as having 40 employees, but 40 families.
Wow.
Because to me, that's huge.
Well, you guys have talked about it on other shows of how much time you spend with your work family. And if you don't take care of those folks as you know you should, then you're not being true to yourself if you really care about people. And, I've had to make some really difficult decisions before of who to let go or somebody to fire or what have you. But God, it's so impactful when you think about that little brownie standing at the bus stop with a little brown uniform on trying to sell cookies, even though her dad's a jerk. It's so hard mentally to balance that. But you have to do what's best for the other 39 families. And sometimes people don't understand the responsibility of leadership as much as they understand the responsibility of a boss. And the boss fires people. The leader thinks through of having to fire and why. And those are two different tasks. And you really have to have really two different mindsets, because you do have to be a boss, but you also have to understand how to lead as a boss. And a lot of people sometimes don't always understand that as they're learning to be a leader and they're stuck at a boss.
It's funny you say that, Greg, because while you said it, it's eye opening for some people to embrace that very thing where you said, the leader wants to understand why somebody has to be fired and what the alternatives are, as opposed to just we got to fire them. They can't be here. This is negligent to our company if we keep them here or whatever. But reality is a leader looks at it through a completely different lens, and so that's the lens that we want to focus on this show. Those guys that are leading and they think, well, I'm a manager, I'm a boss, I'm an owner, but look, dude, if you'll do these 20 mandates, if you'll listen to this training that we're doing, you can deliver yourself from yourself and you can help yourself in the future, And so that's good, Greg. Thank you for sharing that. Well, we're going to get off in some questions here. So, Greg, I just have to ask if, you talk about our show and, we talk about each week, what kind of impact do you want to have? And so I would ask you that question. What kind of impact do you want to have?
I want to have an impact and I want to leave a mark that shows people that you can be a real craftsman, because I think craftsmanship is a dying art, but you have to be able to back it up with professionalism and kindness and to your words a while ago, a servant's heart. I think you can put all those things together and make a pretty, I think Steve Jobs said, make a pretty big dent in the universe. If you really work at those disciplines you guys are working on through this program and those things that, we have written down in these stupid books that we carry around forever. It's about, and you said it so well, and John Maxwell talks about it all the time, is the intentionality. And you have to just shut yourself up long enough to be intentional, to think and then say something that makes sense to a lot more people than saying the first thing that pops into your brain, especially for alpha males, because our natural instinct, uh, my wife and I went to this marriage counselor many, many years ago, not because we were having trouble, but because we were learning about how to be married because we started so early. We didn't know, squat. So the guy's name is Gary Smalley, and he's a preacher. You wouldn't know he's a preacher until you get there, and he tells you he's a preacher. But he talks about the different animals: a lion, a beaver, a golden retriever, and an otter. And so when you figure out which one of those four animals you are, it's your natural instinct. And there's a gabillion different metaphors of a lion, but just taking that pause, having that discipline to zip it up, take a deep breath, and then speak instead of just mouthing off of something that you're going to regret. And you're probably going to be too proud to say, I shouldn't have said that, but dang well you shouldn't have said it.
Yeah. It's funny you say, I told my kids all the time, the first thing that comes to your mind is probably not what you should say.
Yeah.
And if you really just pause, it's funny, of course, the internet's the internet, social media, but there was a interview that Elon Musk did a while back, and there was people raving about how the pause, he was asked a question by a reporter, and he literally took 12 seconds to answer the question. And he was just, and you could tell his brain was all over the place, but it was almost, and look, if anybody ever does that to you, like a pause, a sincere pause, you'll be like, there's something in that dude. Like, they were really intentional about how they responded. And so, Greg, you're exactly right. I love that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Well, it's uncomfortable if you're not accustomed to it, because a lot of people, when they're nervous, they want to fill all the voids of silence with something. And most things that are said out of nervousness don't make a hill of beans worth of sense half the time or matter. It's just filling that void. But if you can get comfortable with that pause, and 12 seconds seems like a darn eternity, when you're sitting there looking at somebody in the eye, like, did you hear me?
On a TV screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do that with email. I'll have to be like, you fire something back and you're like, hold on, let me just delete everything that I just wrote out and I'll answer this tomorrow.
So my key to that is to make sure somebody's name is not in the to or the CC category.
Yeah.
Like just type and rant, but make sure it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
I accidentally hit send.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's pretty good.
Well,
I need to. That's a good one. So
good.
start the email, wear it out.
You need to get it out because there's no sense in having all that bottled up inside of you because it just makes you more, edgy, for lack of a better word. But purge that crap out and then come back with something that you're. And I love this quote. Somebody taught me this. If you could write grandma at the end of every sentence, then you've written a document that is non-offendable to most people. So everything you say, if you can put comma grandma, you're probably in safe waters.
That's good. Yeah, that's a good.
Or Jeremy, depending on how sensitive.
Maddie's writing that down.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah.
It's pretty effective. And another lady, Ann Hadley, I don't know if y'all ever listen to her stuff or read what she writes, but she's really good at making sure that you're writing in a way that not only comes across well, but takes any angst out of your angry message. So you can communicate with some emotion, because emotion is so hard to read over email or over a text, as y'all know. But she, in this morning, in fact, was teaching how to write in a way that is effective, gets your emotion across without being offensive. So she's pretty good too.
That's
Ann
good.
Hadley.
Ann Hadley.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. We need to look her up. Mm-hmm. Maybe she'll come podcast with us. All right, Greg.
We'll have to invite her to do a twofer.
There you go. Hey, we can do it.
A merged podcast.
Yeah. Greg, tell me, how do you personally lead others currently? So, look, let's go back just so our audience understands what you do. We know that you're the vice president of a large mechanical contractor. You're an HVAC guy, okay, and that's all relevant. But what do you do on a daily? Who do you lead? Do you have teams? Do you have people? Do you have anyone that you lead other than me?
I don't have anybody that reports to me in an organizational chart.
Hang on. So yes, but you know that you lead me, right?
Well, that's where I'm headed.
Okay, all right.
So I have no official. This team works for you, or this guy, this gal, whatever. I don't have any of that officially, but we have 7,500 employees, and I work really hard at making myself available to 7,500 employees should they need something.
Wow.
Now, how do you do that? You obviously have to have what I'll call champions at each company. So at HVH, I communicate with you more than I do anybody. Mm-hmm. So if somebody at HVH needs something from a corporate standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from a safety standpoint, from a how do you start a podcast standpoint, I want to be able in a position to help people figure that out. And nowhere, if I read my employment agreement, it doesn't say that. It says you're going to be a safety dude and you're going to be a industry liaison. So I don't care about all that. I'll work for a guy who's a good friend of mine who knows that I'm trying to help our companies, plural. There's 55 of those now across North America. So I have to make sure that I reach some people at different levels at as many organizations as I can work-wise. My volunteer side, and I feel like I volunteer at work a lot because I do a lot of stuff that I'm not required to do.
100%.
My volunteer stuff that I do through 7x24, through ASHRAE, through Commonplace Coffee, another entity I'm part of, through Gravity Technologies, all these different things that I touch, uh, uh, God, I could list out a dozen. I just try to be a resource to connect people to other resources because my toolbox is fairly small of what I know how to do, but I know a lot of people who know how to do a lot of stuff. So I try to be that conduit between people in need and people who have or can do or deliver what needs to be done. And they may know each other from a 3 levels or 3 degrees of separation. So maybe I can just be that conduit to tie people together. And when I do that, the outcome usually is we develop some kind of bond. And, that's what I enjoy. And then next thing you know, we're working on some young person in San Jose who wants to figure out how to be a service manager, or a lady who really hates being a dispatcher and wants to go to nursing school but can't afford it. You get all these different people. Once people figure out you'll help them, people need help. So making sure that the barrier of asking for help is low enough to where they're comfortable asking, because a lot of people think, well, he's a VP at a $2.5 billion corporation. He's not going to talk to me. I answer my phone 24/7. I do.
I know. That's one of my favorite things about you, Greg.
Well, nobody's calling me to see how I'm doing. Mostly people need something. So if I don't help, then, what good are we as a company?
Yeah. Remind me, Matt. I need to call him.
I was about to say, golly.
I need to tighten up.
Greg, I'll call you and ask you how you're doing. Since Jeremy's not.
You'd be the only one on the screen doing that.
Oh, man.
I love it. I love
and Daniel, I apologize to Daniel. I can't see you, but I put you in there too, buddy.
Good deal. All right. So that's impressive, Greg. 7,500 employees and potential touches. Again, I admire you as a leader, and so thank you so much for coming. Tell us, share a moment in time where you realized that you were making an impact. Well, and so let me back up too, so y'all know, when we started this podcast, that's who I got the information from to get it going, And so he sent the email, and then you did all that work. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so anyway, Greg, tell me a moment you realized you were making an impact, a moment in time.
It was 6:58 in the morning, and I was sitting in my office. This is when I worked in Atlanta. And I got a phone call from a fellow who was the service manager for our company. And he said, "Hey, could you come down here to my office for a few minutes?" And, I was friends with this guy anyway, so I didn't think much about it. So I get a cup of coffee, freshen up, walk down there, and there's a young man sitting in his office. And I don't mind telling you, Kelly's the service manager's name at the time. And Kelly said, "Hey, Bob here is about to leave the company, and he just turned his notice in." And I'm like, "What?" Because I always liked Bob. I thought he was a good guy with a good career ahead of him, and just a good person, good family guy. I knew his wife. He had 3 kids at the time. And I said, why are you leaving?" And he said, "Well, I've got an opportunity to go to work for Carrier, the OEM factory service team, and they're going to do this for me, and they're going to do this for me, and they're going to do this for me, and they're going to do this for me." So my mind quickly flashes back to about 10 people that I've known that went to that company at that time of year with those same promises and commitments made to them that were not upheld on the company's end. They brought them in. They worked them really hard during the winter, doing these annual maintenance contracts on these big pieces of equipment. And then about the time the weather turned and all the maintenance was done, they let them go, and they had to go find another job. So I told Bob what I knew about that. He would laugh if he knew I was calling him Bob, but it's just one of those moments where I'm like, okay, we're right here on this point of this dude's going to leave, and he's going to stay. and a lot of it's going to be influenced by what I say right now. This is a moment. And after a little bit of time and understanding what he wanted and what he needed, we were able to put together a little package for him where he decided he would stay with us based on these new conditions that we laid out for him. And he's still there. He still works for that company. And that's been, 25 years or what have you. But so he said he wanted to take the day and think about it. So the next day he called Kelly and said he was going to stay. But I remember thinking that next day, wow, here I am. I was a young guy at the time. I was probably 30 years old. But I remember thinking, I just impacted a family. And like I said, I knew his wife and I knew his 3 little girls. And I knew I made a difference with him, but I also made a difference in the family because in 3 months' time, he wasn't going to have to go out and try to find a job again. So I think that was the first time, Jeremy, that to answer the question, that it dawned on me that there's probably more to what I probably should be doing or could be doing, and maybe I didn't know the difference yet.
That's pretty good. And you said he still works for that company.
Yeah.
Wow. I probably know who it is, but you don't have to share.
He's a team leader there, been there forever, and he's a go-to person.
Wow.
But just one moment in time could have just evaporated that guy's career at that company. And that company they make it part of their DNA for long-term employment.
Sure.
They want, and they have, my uncle has been there 51 years as an employee.
Yeah.
So it's important to that company to have those long-standing familial relations. And that one moment, although the owners will never understand it, I helped that guy decide to stay and continue that legacy that they're working on.
Sure. Well, and your leadership aptitude obviously made an impact at that company because of that.
Yeah, in hindsight, you don't always see that because we're so naive a lot of times when we're doing stuff and living and making decisions that we don't even understand how big of an impact that's going to be later.
Right. That's good. Mm-hmm. So tell me, Greg, what would you say that your leadership style is?
It's pretty direct. I'm not one for a lot of fluff and BS, but I hug really hard and I love really hard, but also tell the truth really vigilantly, is that a word? In a vivid way and on a continual basis. I think that we have to be able to communicate honestly. Tough love sometimes is the right recipe, but a double hug sometimes is the right recipe. It's very situational, and having understanding personalities is really germane to making those conversations, because how I would talk to both of y'all about a common problem is probably different if I was talking to you independently. I'd have to message differently based on what I would have learned about you guys through personality profiles, working around you, going to lunch with you, going to the volleyball game of your kids with you, and understanding the full aspect of you, not just what you were like 9 to 5 when you were ticking the boxes.
Well, I think that it's really cool that you say all of that, tough love type stuff. But I can just tell, sitting here for however long it's been talking with you, that sometimes tough love is always given, and the person that gives it to you, it's all about who they are to you and what impact they've made on your life. Because I can tell you there's a lot of tough love that happens in my day-to-day, and the love that comes from one person is totally different than the other person. It's because of how I value them and how they treat me. So, yeah.
Well, it's comes down to discipline. It really does, because you have to understand your target. Because, I've said this for many, many years, words are like bullets. Once they come out of your mouth, you can't pull them back. So you better make sure you know what you're saying,
That's good.
because when you hit somebody between the eyes, there's no recovery if you haven't understood. And God knows, don't think I've never done that wrong, because I have for a lot of times. But, compound knowledge is learning from your previous mistakes and not making those same mistakes as often, or not at all, hopefully, as you go forward. But you better understand what you're saying, because a lot of people, me included, have to really, really work at forgiveness when somebody poo-poos in my punch bowl. Um, it's tough, because our egos, and Jeremy, I think you said this in one of the previous episodes about dealing with the flesh. You get these opportunities presented to you that are truly a test of your I don't know what the right word it is, your fortitude to be disciplined and to do the right thing. More importantly, the most wicked muscle in our body is the tongue. So if you can control that little rascal, you're a whole lot better off than having to backtrack and say, I'm sorry, and try to make amends, as opposed to just keep your dang mouth shut on the front end. It's so much easier.
That's
I
so
love
good.
it. It's just raw. It's like, dude, just shut up, And this is
But
true.
that's so hard for us.
It is.
We
It
think
is.
we know everything that's good for everybody, and we want to help. My wife says I drive her crazy because I overhelp her. Like, if there's something on the countertop, I want to throw it away, save her a step. She's like, I wasn't through with that. So making sure you know what you're doing before you do it can save a lot of backtracking and having to, you know, the letters RE in front of anything are horrible. You don't want to have to redo, re-say, rethink, reshuffle, reconnect, anything. Once is a lot easier.
Write that down, man.
I am.
That's good, Greg. Thank you for sharing that too. Maddie, did you want to ask
Yeah,
him?
I have a question.
You hit him.
So, think about any major setback in your life that you may have had, and how has that affected you?
She
Well,
picked that question, not me.
That's okay. It's a great question.
It is.
You know, like a lot of people, you judge your setbacks on how you feel about them at that time that they happen to you. Because what could happen in 1 year and the same thing happen 3 years later, it would hit you differently because you're in a different place mentally, physically, whatever. The biggest impact I ever had was when I worked for a particular guy that didn't. He was a boss. He was not a leader. He was a complete jerkwad, and he put me in a really bad position one time to where I had to make a decision of what to do next. And we all get there, and it could be a really big thing. It could be a little bitty thing. This happened to be a big thing because it was about my career and my earning potential and my where are you going to live potential. And a whole lot of questions stemmed on this one episode. And, after some really good conversations with my wife, and we were in a rental house and we had these two couches. I'll never forget it. The rental house was so small, there was like a foot between the couches and they faced each other. And I felt like for like 3 weeks, we sat there like this far apart and we were having these intense conversations. All right, what are we going to do? What do we want to do? How do you feel? How do I feel? Where are we going? What's next? And after all that, we decided we would start our own business in Charlotte, North Carolina. And but it took a lot of discipline because I had to commit to a year before I could make this thing happen.
Mm.
And that was a big deal. We both matured a lot over that year because I had to get a lot of stuff built in the background so that on August 16th of 1999 at 8 o'clock on that Monday morning, we were ready. So I felt like I was working 3 jobs because I was doing my real job because I was committed to doing it fully until I left. I was doing a marketing job, designing graphics and logos and all this stuff that you have to do. And then, I was trying to also be a decent family person and keep my little family happy and my big family happy. So I was really glad to see August 16th of 1999 because I could kind of take a breath, even though it was the beginning of the most difficult thing I was ever going to do up to that point. So sometimes really, really hard work ahead of you can be a blessing based on all the crap and the hard stuff that you had to do to get to that point. So that was a big one for me.
So that's really good. Something you had to overcome. It's interesting, a whole year before he kind of set his goals and then he grinded for a whole year. That's interesting.
Disciplined.
Yeah, disciplined.
You got to be intentionally disciplined.
That's good.
Greg, share something. Who has been a major influence in your life? Maybe there's been 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but talk about that person, someone that has been influential in your life, and why.
Well, without a doubt, and I wrote about it in my book.
Oh, yeah, that's
see that?
right. You should plug that. Yeah, it's blurry. There you go. Deep knowledge.
Deep knowledge. Okay. My father was my number one influencer in my life for a lot of reasons. He was a good father. He was a good boss. He was a good leader. He was a good friend. He was a good hunting buddy, good fishing buddy, all wrapped up into one. And when you lose one person who really has 6 or 7 different roles in your life, it's impactful. I learned a lot from him of what to do and a hell of a lot of what not to do because he was a lion, but he didn't have the pause button. He would just
talk about that. What do you mean? Pause button.
He didn't have the pause. He let it roll when he thought about it. Out it came.
Oh, I got you.
Like we
That
all have
pause.
the pause. We're talking
thinking-
about the pause.
Yeah, like the
I was thinking like the fight.
Yeah, I was too. I thought you were talking fight, but you're talking about the pause.
PAUSE.
Got it. Yeah.
He did not have a pause button.
Okay.
He had I just thought this and you're about to hear this.
Sounds like me.
And, generationally, I guess it was normal. He was born in 1937, which would have made him maybe an early baby boomer. But that generation went through a lot of stuff. Their parents were going to war a lot, and or the ladies of those families worked in factories. The kids did a lot of learning and growing on their own while they were, a lot of them almost starving in the U.S. because we put so much effort into winning that war, World War II. But both of my grandfathers were in the war. And those kids are tough. They had to be tough. And so I don't begrudge anything he ever said to me now. Of course, I did when he said those things. But he never had a nefarious attempt at saying anything to me. It was always honest. It was always for my benefit. It was just worded differently than I can word stuff now, or you can word things to a 18-year-old right now. You just couldn't get away with what I heard. You would be in jail or canceled in our culture. But great man. I miss him every day to this day. And he passed away in 1994, and I still think about the man every day. Very influential in setting the tone of most of my foundation.
Interesting. It sounds like a good dude. I would love to have met him. Didn't get the opportunity to, but
Well, we both know the same amount of people that did know him, and
Oh yeah,
they, it's so cool to hear people talk about your dad in such a positive way. Um, and he was big and gruff, but he was a teddy bear also. It was just all how that landed that day, because
yeah,
there was no synthesization. You got it raw.
nice, very good. Um, Maddie, did you? Let's see. Let's go with.
Okay.
What are y'all playing over there? Checkers with my
Yeah.
answers?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've got a bunch of questions, and we're trying. I even have some that I didn't give you. So,
Always my favorite.
yeah,
The blindsided question.
All right. If I told you there was one thing you could share with the entire world that you haven't already shared on your podcast, what would it be?
Good question, Maddie. We've done 150 some odd episodes, so let me go back into my brain. But
You heard it here first.
if I could share one thing is have a plan. Know what you're doing. Know how you're going to deal with adversity. Understand your personal finances. Understand that setbacks are coming. We don't get this life. And it was funny because this morning in church, heard a little bit about the unexpected parts of life and how they come at you out of the blue. It's so true. And you have to be prepared to take care of your family, even if you're a mom or a husband and wife only. Um, so many decisions are made in spur of the moment situations that are really, really detrimental to long term health or long term prosperity or long term success. Because if you're having to make on the spot decisions, um, it's not good. I mean, we all have to do it, but you have to have a thesis that you believe in. And yes, you can answer off the cuff questions that arise, but you have to have that foundation of what you're striving for, what you're building to pull from, so that you don't get caught in a crunch. And you can't have plan A and not have B or C and D. And you better be thinking about E, because just like the people have found out think about the last year of what we've been through, just from natural disasters and people not understanding what was coming. Our company was impacted by hurricane, was it Helene, that hit the North Carolina mountains. We had families that lost a house overnight, their whole lives stuff. And yes, it's stuff, and stuff can be replaced a lot. But when you literally wake up on a Monday and you don't have anything except your life, that's a pretty big setback. So, do you have money you can get to? Do you have a living will? Do you have all those pieces of your life that make rough decision making times easier in place? And if you don't, you need to start working on them.
so ready, being prepared, being ready, I guess, kind of.
You got to be
Yeah.
a prepper. And I'm not talking
Prepper.
about just
Prepper.
ammunition. I'm talking about prepping life. Have your stuff laid out in a file. Have it in a safe somewhere. Maybe it's a personal safe deposit box or what have you. But when the poop hits the fan, not if, because it's going to, you better have something to get that poop out of the fan with.
There you go. That's good. I got one good for you right here, Greg. So, and this one you didn't know about, but just give me two people that you admire. So I'll let you, and I'm gonna let you think about it for a minute, because it's merits thinking. It's some thought. Two people that you admire, and why. So, and you want me to ask you another one that we can carry on while you contemplate that, or do you want to hit it?
Sure, I'm open.
Okay. So, two people that you admire and why. And while you dwell on that for just a minute, let's see. Who? Oh, no, we already asked that. So,
Do the pageant question.
Yeah, do it. Which one?
The most important leadership quality.
Oh, yes. There you go. That is a good one. So of all the mandates that we've done, that you've said you've listened to the podcast, there's 20 of them, but which one do you think is the most critical?
Honesty. Because nothing else matters. The other 19 are kind of irrelevant if you're not grounded in the truth. It's
That's
easy
good.
for me.
Yep.
Grounded in truth. Perfect.
I like it.
All right. Good. Now,
George Washington
George.
crossed the Delaware River, and they broke ice to do so, wearing moccasins, dressed in clothing that we would think right now would be goodwill quality stuff compared to the tactical clothing that our military has now.
Mm.
And yet he led a group of men and probably some women as our country was being formed to create the best thing that's ever hit this world. And that's the United States.
Mm.
And without men like that and women like that, including his wife, Martha, and some of the stuff they did at a time that now makes you think, how in the world did they endure that? Always sticks with me. Understanding walking through knee-deep snow. I was cold this morning going to church without a jacket on, okay? That's how much of a wimp we have become as a country.
That's crazy. That's a point.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Compared to knee-deep snow, breaking the ice cap on a river and leading a group of warriors through it. And in a very similar fashion, but obviously a lot different, my paternal grandmother, Gladys was her name, and the things that she did personally and the things of her generation had to endure. Sharecropping on a small farm in South Georgia with about nothing, raising kids that were functional. This is a time when people didn't go to school out of luxury. They went to school when they didn't have chores to do or stuff to pick or a house to board up and try to stuff the holes in the floor with insulation of whatever they could find. These women in particular of that era raised a group of people that went on to really make our country what it is today. You think about, our elected officials, and some of them are, came from very affluent families. But most of the people that make our country work came from really modest backgrounds for the most part. If you look at how the wealth is distributed in this country, most of us don't have it. A few of us have it. And if you think about what those ladies built our families on with their husbands off the war or whatever they had to do, and I saw it firsthand with my grandmother and what she could do. She could cook, she could bake, she could change a tractor tire, she needed to, literally. And they raised 24,000 chickens at the time for Gold Kiss. They were a contract chicken farmer. So really have a lot of respect for her and as a human and as somebody that I would follow anywhere based on her leadership, although she didn't know she was leading anybody.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's my two.
we talk about that. So that's your two. That's great, and you've done an exceptional job at describing why.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, thank you for sharing that. So that was a spur of the moment deal, and you nailed it. What about the most important message to you? I'll tell you what. Before we do that, Greg, tell me a story. I think that we have a mutual friend. We haven't spoke about him yet, and so it's always fun to talk about JB. We're going to talk about JB because he's probably going to listen to this, and so
He better.
Yeah, he
We'll have to
better.
pay
That's
him
right.
to, but he'll listen to it.
Yeah, he'll listen. Jeff Birch, probably, and I haven't really done a lot of talking about Jeff on this podcast. But Jeff was the single most influential person in my life personally. And Greg worked with Jeff. So, I want Greg to talk about Jeff for a minute. I'm going to turn it over to you. Just tell us about Jeff, who he is, and then I want you to share a story after you're done that you may be able to share.
So I started off earlier talking about a guy who I worked with that heard me say something when I was an apprentice, and he asked me, was I crazy for saying that? And that was Jeff. Um, Jeff and I were working in Atlanta, and I'll tell him about him when I get through with this. I just want to set the stage. We were working at a TV studio, WAGA. It was the Channel 5, and at the time, I think it was a Fox affiliate or what have you. And the guy we worked for was our contact on site, very dry, very nice guy, but just not overly socially gifted, maybe is the right way to say it. So one day, Jeff and I were going to lunch, and we stopped by this man's office to say, hey, we're out of the building. We're going to go grab a bite to eat, and we'll be right back. So instead of saying that, I said all of that, and can we bring you anything? And at the time, I didn't know how lucky we were, but he said, no, thank you. I brought my lunch from home. I'm fine. So we get in the truck to go to lunch. Jeff said, what in the world did you ask him that for? I'm like, what, man? I'm trying to be nice to the guy. He said, yeah, I know, but neither one of us have any money. we really would have been in a pickle. But Jeff's a U.S. Navy veteran, 10 years older than I am. So Jeff's 70 or 71. A heck of a guy that raised a great family, and that he worked at the same company where Jeremy and I both worked as well. And he's just a tremendous person. He's a deep thinker, and just a genuine human that you want to be around. He's just a nice guy. He's very insightful, and he asks you questions that make you really think a lot. So one morning, Jeff and I worked a lot of overtime together. Like every time there was an opportunity, because he had 3 kids and a house note and a car note, and I don't think Cheryl worked at the time. So he was always looking for extra money. I was young and single, and or just got married and trying to build a house or buy a house. So we were both in the money making mode of life. So one year we both worked over 3,000 hours. So we worked a lot. One Saturday morning, we're working at the Georgia Pacific building at 55, I think it's 55 Marietta Street downtown. And we were up in the ceiling, both of us about waist deep in the ceiling, working on this piece of equipment. We had been by ourselves all morning, and we were just having a ball, getting our work done, but cutting up and what have you. And at the time, I would say that we were both probably more foul-mouthed than we would be now as adults, even though Jeff, I would tell you, is 10 years older than I am. So, Jeff, you were just a late bloomer, I guess, if you're hearing this. So we go downstairs. I remember we went to Subway, I think, and got a sandwich, came back to work, and we continued our job. We were changing a heat exchanger and Carrier water source heat pumps. I remember those really well because Carrier had a problem, and we were getting paid by the factory to make these corrections. So we were up in the ceiling working, and Jeff, he starts on the roll. And when he gets on a roll, he's not using a pause button either. He's just letting it rip. And about 30 minutes into our starting our work from lunch, we hear a tap on Jeff's ladder. And we both look down, and there's the sweetest little middle-aged lady standing there. And she said to Jeff, looking up at him, sir, I know that y'all were here by yourself this morning, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to let you know that I came in while y'all were at lunch and I'm working just down the hallway with my door open. And you could literally see him like imploded a little bit. He went from a full size human like down to like 3/4 size human because he was just sucked in so far.
Melted.
She was so gracious with our and we were not doing anything horrible. We just weren't using a very good filter for a work environment. But she was so kind that day not to call our boss, who was my dad at the time, and say, "What are these two idiots doing in my ceiling working?" But that's just one of many, many, many stories about Jeff that I could share. But we learned a lot from each other. Um, we always we had good competition between us. It was never hostile. We both pulled for each other and we both helped each other get better at our craft. And I think as people was the kind of the side benefit of we didn't know what we were doing. Okay. We were just doing what we knew how to do. And that was take care of each other. But in the process, we made each other better.
That's good.
They were both leaders in parallel. They worked together, and then they both went on to be leaders of large magnitude. And in addition, I mean, like I said earlier, they both have mentored me. Jeff Birch, I worked for him for probably 10 or 12 years. And so we share that. Jeff is all that he said. Jeff was a hard nose for a while. You probably remember those days. And then he was also he led with grace later in his career. And I again, the most influential person in my life, Jeff Birch, hands down. But my dad, of course, my dad was super influential in my life. But Jeff, from the time I became a man, I say I became a man, and even till today, still mentors me. So,
Well,
anyway.
Jeremy, don't or I won't say it like that. I have found over my life the people that I get to grow with,
Mm.
regardless of our independent positions, if we're growing together, it's just sweeter
Oh yeah,
because you get to see them maturing, they're watching you mature, and together you're much more of an impact overall.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, you'd be fine independently if you're out doing your own thing, but when you team people up that are working together on a mission, it's just so much more impactful.
Yeah,
I find.
yeah, I agree. Maddie, do you have anything else for Mr. Greg?
I think one question that we've asked other guests is how has your leadership changed?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's going to be a really cool answer from you because you've told stories from, being an apprentice to working in the ceiling and things like that. So how have you had to change your leadership outlook, I guess?
Yeah, I think in the delivery more than anything, I don't think I've changed my core foundational beliefs that were set in stone when I was a kid. Honesty, although I lied and got my butt beat by my parents. Uh, Being a good person, although I've been known to not be a good person at times. Try to tell the truth even when it hurts, even though I've lied at times. Having the foundation to always fall back on is important. And I think the more you learn, the less you want to do those not so good things, and the more you want to do the good things because you see the impact it has on other people. You know, you can look in the mirror and tell yourself about any lie you want to, but when you're looking at other people, they can see right through you. Um,
Mm.
so you better be comfortable in the mirror as you are with other people, and I think that takes seasoning. I think it takes scar tissue. I think it takes hurt feelings, and most of that stuff you inflict upon yourself by doing an inventory of how you've acted, whether that be daily, whether that be weekly, however you want to do it. But if you don't take time and reflect back on, okay, was I an A student this week or a C student this week? I got to do better at X, Y, and Z. and then having that discipline to really follow through, and be a better person. I practice Kaizen. You can see my tattoo on my wrist, and that's right there. But so I remember it all the time, and I see it all the time. And Kaizen's a Middle Eastern practice of continuous improvement.
Mm.
So you want to do something, and then you measure it, and then you tweak it, and then you do it again, and then you measure it, and you tweak it, and then you do it again. And at first, you're making these macro leaps in how you're handling whatever problem you're attacking with the Kaizen philosophy. But before you know it, you're really down to making micro changes because you've refined your practice of writing or speaking or interacting with your mother in law or whatever you're struggling with. You've got to keep refining it so that it doesn't take you out of your normal mode. And normal mode meaning if you take the DISC personality profile, your normal behavior is how you are naturally. Your modified is how you have to be in order to get along in a situation. So the closer you can stay to your normal mode, the less you have to go to your modified. That delta is measured in stress. And you may not even realize it, but if you know that you've got to go to a cocktail party and you've got to be like this while you're there, well, that difference that you're having to modify your normal behavior of shows up as stress. And that could be nervous laughter. It could be excessive drinking and whatever. Something's going to trigger you out of your normal mode. And then the regret starts the next day because then you're like, damn, I shouldn't have acted like that or said that or thought that or whatever, because you got to go back to that inventory. How did I do? What do I need to get better at? And, it sounds like I'm going through a 12-step program, but it's really a matter of just taking yourself and holding yourself accountable for where you're trying to get. And that can be, a long way or a short distance from where you are now. And there's a great book called The Gap and the Gain. And I think I've talked to Jeremy about it before, but everybody starts somewhere on their journey. And you're somewhere else on your journey now. And maybe you're halfway there, maybe you're a tenth of the way there, or maybe you're 9/10 of the way there. Don't celebrate how far you've yet, or don't sweat how far you've yet to go. Celebrate how far you've come and the things you have accomplished and the times that you haven't had to beat yourself up because you did work on yourself and you got better at this. Yeah, you want to be a 9 out of 10 every time, but it's not realistic. So celebrate the 7, like I did okay today. The poop was in the fan, but I held it together, and I didn't come home and kick the dog. It's it's really about controlling your mouth, and because that dang tongue muscle leads to so many problems that we have to readdress, and we know what RE means.
RE is bad.
Trouble.
Yeah, that's good.
That is good. That was very good, Greg. What you were just describing, the gap is stress between what you are and what you have to be. That's a lot of food for thought for us. I mean, and I've heard that same teaching from I don't to be honest with you, I don't even recall, but I've heard it. And but that is the stress, what you call stress. And so,
well, we all go through it. I mean, you can get anxious about going to the doctor and, you're sitting in the parking lot, but, you can read the Bible and it says not to worry about anything because you can't do anything about it anyway, but you still do it. That's our sinful nature, is to do what comes natural to us, not what we should do. But if you can just take those moments and kind of like say, I'm in that moment and I'm not going to let it affect me. I'm going to keep my level head and I'm going to take my pause before I speak. It goes a long way.
That's good, Greg.
And you talked about, and I know we've got to possibly wrap up here soon. I
Yeah,
think.
we're landing the plane here. We got 5 minutes.
You were saying you'd modify it, go back and get better and do whatever. And we had a guest on here a few weeks ago, and he called it the AAR, and it's the after action review.
Mm-hmm.
A little different, but that was my key takeaway from that.
Yeah, it's good.
So it's cool to see different guests that we have on here say the same thing, or relatively the same
It
thing.
is. They say it the same thing in different ways.
Right. Yeah.
Well, mine hits me at night is when I do most of my deep thinking of how I did during the day, because I'm about a half insomniac anyway. Once I get to sleep, I'm good, but I have all this crap I have to go through, and part of that's my inventory of the day. All right, if I look back at my book or my calendar on the screen and see I had, call it 5 things that I interacted with other people. How did I do on those 5 things? And you really, it's ugly some days. You're like, I didn't give Jeremy the attention because I had to get this out, and I was halfway engaged. I needed to drop the book, drop the pencil, drop the phone, and look and listen and be engaged in what somebody's trying to tell me. And that's a hard thing for me, because I feel like personally I want to do a lot, and I do a lot. But his problem that is come to a head, however it got here, I called him, he called me. If we think enough of each other to have that moment in time, I need to shut up and listen. And it really comes down to grading yourself on how, or myself, of how did I do? And I think that's my ongoing challenge is being present and being cognitive of what the situation is asking for. If he's asking me, can I meet him at lunch in 2 weeks? Boom, we're done. But if he's telling me that he's putting his house on the market and I need to know why, I need to understand that, and I need to be engaged in that. Because if he thinks enough to tell me, I need to have enough respect to listen.
Being present. That's good. There's power in that. Greg, we got to wrap it up because we're over an hour, which is great, by the way. I'm not mad about it.
We started early.
Yeah, we started a little late, but our discipline ran over, and so hey, it's all good. But hey, look,
But we were intentional about it.
Oh yeah. So tell me this: if you had one more thing to say, it could be a question, it could be a comment, it could be a concern. Anything you want to say before we wrap?
Yeah, there is one thing. Take somebody that is coming through life under your wing and help them. Whatever they need. Maybe they need to be a better Girl Scout. Maybe they need to be a better mom. Whatever they're striving towards. Maybe it's a salesperson at work that is struggling. Grab somebody by the arm and help somebody. Because if we all do that, we hear so much right now about people being anxious and depressed and medication and suicide and opioid addiction. If we would interact a little bit more and be intentional about hugging up on somebody, young people, take them under your wing, walk them across the threshold, get them going. If we all would do that, we'd be such a better humanity and have such a better place on earth.
Yeah, start small, right? Just one person at a time.
Hand-to-hand combat, man. Think about it. One person helped you, Jeff.
Yeah, 100. Well, multiple people, but Jeff certainly did. You have. There's been a lot of people that brought me along, and it's funny you mentioned that because part of you growing as a leader is, in fact, grabbing somebody else and pulling them with you, and so I certainly owe that to the world.
That's great.
Our country needs that. It's a national security threat, in my opinion, if we don't start acting differently, because our country was built on patriotism. Patriotism built by people that share a common mission. If we don't really keep that fire stoked a little bit, that flame's going to go out. And when people become apathetic about us living like we get to live and are blessed to be free and open and have a podcast and say what we want, we got to work at that. So
that's right. Well, thank you.
My thoughts for the day.
Thank you so much, Greg, for coming and giving us an hour of your time. Anybody that has the responsibilities that you have that gives us their time, we take it serious. And I just want to say thank you sincerely.
We need to get
you're
you
welcome.
and Jeff. We'll have dinner or something sometime.
Oh yeah, that would be a trip.
Be a fly on the wall
Yeah.
with that conversation.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
That would be a trip. We would all learn some more. That's gracious of you to say that about my time, but I feel that about you guys. You're giving up some time on Sunday afternoon, which traditionally is your family time,
Yeah.
in order to work on yourself so that you can be better the other 23 hours on Sunday next time. So
Right.
I get it and I appreciate it.
Well, we carve out time, and we feel like this helps us, and it also helps others, right?
Mm-hmm.
It helps our families. Hopefully, it helped you, Greg.
I've never talked to a group of people where I didn't walk away with something written down that I get to go noodle on now.
Yeah, good,
And I did.
good.
Mission accomplished.
Excellent. Well, hey, that's what it's all about. So we're making an impact. So thank you so much, Greg, and stay tuned. We're gonna jump off the recording, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, buddy.
I'm going to send you a new hat too, by the way.